Let's bring in right now Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California. He was co-sponsor of the Epstein Files Transparency Act. He was among the lawmakers who viewed the files yesterday, shown to members of Congress by the Justice Department. I don't understand. I really don't. I don't understand why you have Comer, Republicans on the Hill, Republicans in the Justice Department, Republicans in the White House so invested. Talk about the worst of the worst in protecting what you call the Epstein class, in protecting the richest, most powerful men on the planet. And I understand that even some of the documents you got, the names of these apparently horrific people who may have trafficked children along with Jeffrey Epstein, they were redacted, right? From what you saw.
Joe, you're right. I mean, we've discussed this on your show before. They should have just got all the documents out last March. There should be a consensus in this country that we don't protect pedophiles. We don't protect rich and powerful people who go to Epstein's Island while young girls are being raped. And yet Massey and I were there for 2 hours, and we found 6 names just in those 2 hours of men whose identity was protected and concealed. And we approached the Justice Department. They've now released the identity of those 6 men. But think about it. We just did that for 2 hours. Think how many other people are being protected. But the bigger issue, and this is something I hope people understand, is Donald Trump had the FBI scrub those files in March. And the documents we saw already had the redactions of that FBI in March. So we still have not seen the vast majority of documents unredacted that have the survivor statements of the rich and powerful men who committed these crimes.
Congressman, good morning. We've heard the outcry now for years about the Epstein files, led principally by conservatives who wanted to get to the bottom of who was allegedly sexually assaulting underage girls. And so now we have the files. And you have all of these redactions of people who are not victims. They said it's taking so long because we want to protect the victims. But as you and others have said, these names that you've seen are not of victims being redacted. It's of rich and powerful men. So just point blank, why do you think they are protecting rich and powerful men? This is not about protecting the victims. What is your theory here?
They don't want to offend their friends. They don't want to offend their donors. They don't want to offend the reputations of powerful people, even though our bill, Thomas Massey and my bill, says that you can't consider reputation when disclosing. But here's what I find frustrating. You have the King of Britain saying that his own brother needs to be criminally investigated. In Norway, you have the princess saying that she's not going to be able to become the queen. Other countries are calling for investigations. Here we have a sitting cabinet member, Howard Lutnick, who's all over the files as having a business relationship, allegedly, and personal relationship, allegedly, after Epstein was already convicted. He has allegedly lied about his relationship, and there's no consequence. I mean, we have to get real in this country. Are we going to take action like every other country in the world is?
I'm curious. I mean, you're right. There are some men who are revealed in these files when they were initially the 3 million documents released. Lutnick being one of them. This CBS doctor, Peter Attia, having like, I don't know, 1,700 interactions. I mean, really clearly interacting in a way that showed that he kind of knew the game. I'm curious, who are these 6 men? I just want to, did they release the names or no?
They have. I mean, one of them is a sultan. They did, because Massey and I, after we reviewed the files, we said, look, these are clearly wrong redactions. And to their credit, they said, OK, we'll release them. But well, one is Lex Wexner, who was released. Another is a sultan in a Dubai port. There are other names that are not as prominent, but are foreign business folks. People can see them. They're now released. But the point is, we did this for 2 hours. It can't be members of Congress's job to review 3 million files. There are probably many more of these men. And the more important point is what Justice got was already scrubbed. Donald Trump's FBI in March went and scrubbed these files. The Justice Department just told us, OK, we're getting these documents uploaded, but they've already been redacted. And so they're protecting powerful people.
So, Congressman, we know the Clintons, the former president and former Secretary of State, are set for depositions later in this month. Give us, please, if you will, the approach, how you'll approach that, because this is obviously a very partisan matter right now. You and your colleagues have pointed out, and feel free to do so again, that if the Clintons are to be there, well, shouldn't President Trump as well? So what is this going to look like? What do you hope to learn?
Well, the person who doesn't want the Clintons testifying most is Donald Trump. I mean, that's why he's out there saying that he doesn't want to have to come before the committee. And the Clintons have been actually the most willing to testify. We should ask them what they knew. We should ask them what Epstein's connections were with the government, why he's getting tips from Gordon Brown's assistant Mendelson. We should ask them if they knew any other people who went to this island, and they should have to answer publicly. But the point is, then Donald Trump needs to be brought before the committee. And rich and powerful people like Bill Gates, who's all over the files, who said that they went to Epstein's Island, they need to be called before a committee and to explain what's happening. Instead of Comer just having a witch hunt on the Clintons, why doesn't he open up an oversight committee on the Epstein files and start to have anyone who's in those files come and testify?
All right, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna of California, thank you very much.